late 2014, allegations of sexual assaults committed on children by billionaire businessman Sidney Frankel decades ago surfaced in the media.
He touched my penis, he masturbated me. And I think the second occasion, it occurred in very much the same way.
He would place me sideways, so my legs is in between his legs. And then he would penetrate.
There are now 8 complainants pursuing civil claims for damages against Frankel. They accuse him of sexually abusing them when they were children. They wanted the late Sidney Frankel prosecuted for the alleged offences, and they challenged the law preventing survivors of sexual abuse from laying criminal charges against perpetrators 20 years after a crime is committed. The High Court ruled in their favour.
Legally, it's fantastic. We have this judgment. I don't know that it's going to result in convictions.
Marinda Smith was in grade 1 when she crossed paths with her mother's employer, stockbroker Sidney Frankel. Her mother, a single parent, raising 5 children alone, worked for Frankel for 30 years. Frankel Pollock was the biggest brokerage in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in the 80s and 90s, and it was started by Frankel's father and became massively successful under Sidney Frankel.
She always felt so honored because he would come to her and always ask her about, how's Marinda doing? If Marinda comes visiting, bring her to my office, I want to say hello to her. And she felt honored. She thought, but gee, I'm just a working class person, and my boss is interested in my children.
Marinda says her mother had no reason to question the motives behind Frankel's interest in her daughter. Whenever Marinda was at work with her, they would make a stop at Frankel's office.
And we would go to her office and she would say, come, let me take you to Mr. Frankel's office to say hello. And then it feels like your heart actually literally sunk in your shoes. Because you knew you couldn't say anything, you just had to go.
She says her worst fears would then come true.
Most of the times, 90%, I had my school clothes on, and he would place like sideways. He's sitting like this, he would place me sideways, so my legs is in between his legs. And then he would penetrate. I never looked down because it was too painful. And then the roller, obviously, first he would put the roller in my hands as he placed me. And then I would just sit there with the roller and cling to it, sometimes squashing it. From the pain, the penetration. I cannot tell you how many fingers, I can't tell you what penetrated, but it was so painful.
In Parktown, less than 20 kilometers from where this alleged abuse took place, was the Arcadia Jewish Orphanage. Frankel was a patron of the orphanage and generously donated money to it. One young resident, Shane Rothkuhl, who grew up there, says his parents divorced when he was young, his dad was an alcoholic, and at an early age he was put into care at Arcadia.
And Franco was one of those people that was just always connected. He was always around. I mean, it was commonplace for him. I mean, now that I'm about to say this, it's going to seem extremely weird in the context, but he would just pop by after work, stop in and visit. But he had this certain this allure almost, because of his status. He always drove the latest BMW. He to my mind at the time, he was a super legend.
Shane alleges that an encounter with Frankel one summer afternoon changed his life.
I remember returning from the pool into the main house, which is like a ballroom that can sit 150 people, in a library, and I'm walking up one of the back entrances into the building, and Frankel had caught me alone, which is, given the size of the place, I think it was 17 hectares. We were like 40 kids. It's not hard. And we were caught alone in one of the small rooms in the main building. I was caught alone with him, rather. And he I think now what I think is that he possibly was sounding me out the initial stages of grooming. So he touched my penis, he masturbated me. And I think the second occasion, it occurred in very much the same way, in the same setting, just in a different part of the building. It wasn't a long encounter. I think at the time, I froze.
In primary school, Nicole Levenstein's best friend was related to the Frankel family. Nicole, who now lives in Israel, says she grew up as a typically privileged white Jewish child in the 1970s. Her visits to her friend brought her into contact with Frankel. She was only 7.
He would arrive in a big car and fetch a whole load of us children. We would go through to the farm in Midrand, and my earliest recall is spending the day in the pool. He would then take me out of the swimming pool, take my costume off, put the towel around me, and position me on his lap in such a way that my back was exposed to an erection that he had. He would then dry me and insert his finger into my vagina. All the time he would be saying, this is something special between you and I, this is something that you don't tell anybody about. After I was dried, I would find myself in a circle with all the other kids, and he would then lead an exercise session where he said in order for us to become good horse riders, we needed to develop our leg muscles, and he would ensure that we lay there with no panties on, just our dresses on, and he would come round and say, you're doing this exercise incorrectly or you're doing it right. And, make sure that when he was doing that, he was sitting down beside me and again, touching me inappropriately and abusively.
Jerry, I think looking at the widespread of my forecast, it's probably been the most difficult week that we've ever had, because you had the trade figures which came out after the forecast. You've also got the CPI.
Billionaire businessman Sidney Frankel is accused of sexually assaulting children decades ago. Miranda Smith came out with her claim of alleged abuse at the hands of Frankel 2 years ago after watching a current affairs show exposing the allegations against Frankel. She never told her mother about her experiences.
Who would have believed me? In comparison, a person like Sidney Frankel, coming from a normal, not poor, but an average, just making ends meet family, in comparison to him, no one would have believed me. And I thought I was always the only one.
I mean, I was told at the time that I was making it up, which was commonplace. Back then, the response was, you don't wash that laundry out in public. I mean, he would never do that. No. Even if 10 people said that, he still wouldn't do it. We don't speak about, it was in hushed tones. And it's just a child. Must be making it up. And that child, of course, he can't. Look at the background he comes from. I mean, look at his parents. Look why he's here. These kids are just making it up. They're looking for attention. The funny thing is that ultimately, some time later, another girl makes an allegation about inappropriate contact in a bathroom. Not physical contact, but that he had entered the bathroom while she was bathing. And like that, access revoked. He was forbidden any further contact with the children. Just one day, he was stopped contact. And the institution can't seem to explain why.
The truth is that I think growing up in South Africa in the 70s, so much of the care of us children was outsourced, whether it was to domestic workers or to other people. Our parents didn't really have a handle on who we were with and where we were going and what that meant. So it was absolutely normal for him to be able to come and take us away for a day. It was, parents didn't question that sort of thing. And he was a man who was with certain social standing. When I confronted my mom about the fact that we were allowed to go with him, she said, but in the 70s, they didn't even know what a paedophile was. It's almost as if that sort of thing wasn't known about in those days.
Determined to bring Frankel to book, Nicole, who knew several people who had allegedly suffered a similar fate to her, took action. There are now 8 complainants, including Nicole, Shane, Mirinda, pursuing civil claims for damages against Frankel. They accuse him of sexually abusing them when they were children. Nicole says she tried to get answers from Frankel, but with no luck. In the following conversation from 2013, she confronts Frankel.
Hello?
Hi, Sidney.
Yeah?
Hi, I wonder if it would be possible to meet with you. I'd like to speak to you about the sexual abuse I suffered at your hands as a child many, many years ago. And I'd like to meet with you to talk about it.
Yeah, can you hold on? I'm just on the other phone. Can you hold on 1 second?
Yeah.
Call has been placed on hold. Please wait.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Yeah?
When are you prepared to meet with me? Are you available tomorrow or Friday?
Who am I talking to?
My name is Nikki.
Nikki who?
No, that's not relevant for now. You'll see me and you'll know me. I just think that I'd like to get some clarity and some answers as to what went on when I was a young girl. And I would hate to think that you're a coward, that you wouldn't meet with me to give me the answers I'm looking for.
Nikki, I'm flying out tomorrow.
You're flying out tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. When is it possible then for me to talk to you?
Can I talk to you with my lawyer on Monday?
You can talk to me with your lawyer on Monday.
Yeah, because I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. You don't know what I'm talking about. You know what
Can I talk to you with my lawyer?
You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, just as 10 other people who I've spoken to have the exact same story to tell. So for you to tell me you don't know what you're talking about is a lie.
Okay.
I don't know how you live with yourself, Sidney, after the damage you've done to so many people, but I'm willing to meet with you with your lawyer.
Okay.
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 Where do I receive let me know who your lawyer is so I can call them to find out when the appointment would be and where.
Well, as I said, I'm on my way to the airport now. Can you call me on Monday?
You're on your way to the airport. I'll call you on Monday. Will you have the courage to take my call?
I'm not a person who's a coward.
You're not a person who's a coward. Okay. All right. So expect my call on Monday, and I'll be happy to meet with you and your lawyer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
She even contacted his wife.
Hello?
Hi, is that Kelly?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Kelly. I don't know if you remember, I phoned you last year in connection with discussing something that had happened between your husband and I when I was a child.
I do.
And I was wondering if it would be possible, I'm feeling now as if I'm ready to meet with you. I was wondering if it would be possible for you to...
I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to meet with you.
You're not?
Okay, no. Because this is really not my issue, and I really don't want to discuss it.
Okay, so do you think that I should meet with your husband?
You have to make that decision. I can't.
Can you give me his number?
No, I can't.
You can't.
Mm-mm. You want it, you'll find it.
But how do you feel being a woman living with a man who has sexually abused multiple amounts of children?
That's my feelings, and what I've done about it is my business, and I don't wish to pursue this conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ian Levitt is the attorney representing the 8 complainants.
I've consulted with many more victims of the alleged abuse of Franco. Have come to see me. They've told me what's happened. It ties in with the stories of abuse from the other 8, but they haven't been ready to pursue any angles. They've offered their support. They've offered the comfort to the 8, and it's been an amazing journey. But they haven't been able to, for many reasons. Most of them are happily, but they're married and they've got families, and they just, for their own reasons, do not want to pursue it.
Unlike rape, for which a victim can lay criminal charges at any time, sexual assaults, offences like fondling and grooming, had a 20-year cutoff period. The applicants challenged this law. But then, in the middle of this, in April this year, Frankel died.
I was angry. Angry because I thought, you swine, you escaped the criminal case. And that was what I wanted. I wanted him to go to jail.
We were almost there at that point of being able to sit in a court and, have him not be judged, be forced to listen, to face us, because he was a coward. When we finally had the courage to come forward, and it took us as long as it did, he used every means possible to avoid it. Every single means possible, and from beyond the grave, he's continuing to do that.
In June this year, in what has been hailed as a landmark victory, the South Gauteng High Court ruled Section 18 of the Criminal Procedures Act invalid and inconsistent with the Constitution, meaning that children and adults could now be allowed to lay charges at any time after sexual offences occur. Eight complainants who accused Sidney Frankel of allegedly sexually abusing them decades ago challenged the law preventing them from laying charges against him 20 years after the alleged incidents occurred. The High Court ruled in their favour, acknowledging that sexual offences can have the same effect on victims as rape. Sheena Swimmer is an attorney at the Centre for Applied Legal Studies. She explains that there needs to be a fundamental change in the way the court ruling plays out practically.
The way the criminal justice system deals with sexual violence is problematic. And I don't know, unless there's a fundamental change in many things, the way prosecutors deal with the victim in the matter, the way judges view women and gender stereotypes. I don't think unless those things change, unless there's serious training, unless there is a serious move away from focusing on women as almost as women as the accused in these matters, holding the woman to prove things. If that's not changed, I don't know that legally it's fantastic we have this judgment. I don't know that it's going to result in convictions.
Bill Cosby, Jimmy Savile, Bob Hewitt, and Rolf Harris. Famous men accused of sexually assaulting victims. Many question why survivors often wait so long to come forward. Vincentia Dlamini from the organization Women and Men Against Child Abuse understands the complex role that a survivor's trauma plays in protecting the abuser.
There is a lot of questions that are put, on the victim, say, why were you quiet all along? Funny, we don't ask the offenders why they sexually assault minor kids, as much as we do on the victims. But I just want to say that it's not easy to talk about sexual assault, especially when you're a child. Even with adult survivors of sexual abuse, it's not easy for them.
The economy certainly is slowing down. We've seen that with the car.
When the allegations about Sidney Frankel first surfaced 3 years ago in the media, some questioned why there wasn't a lot of noise made by the media. Anton Harbour, a media analyst and commentator, wrote a column about this.
Well, in particular, the business media ignored it, and he was a man who was often in the business media. I could only reach one conclusion, which was that he was protected because he was rich and powerful. There's no question in my mind that it was a front-page story. He's a prominent, well-known, respected businessman who has a long history of allegations of abuse of children and doing it in the most despicable way. He was a major donor to the Arcadia orphanage, so he was using donations to orphanage to get access to children. Completely appalling. And there's no question in my mind that it justified major front-page investigation, coverage and pursuit of the story, and we didn't see that. And I think editors owe us an explanation.
Franco Pollock was the biggest brokerage in the JSE in the 80s and 90s. And it was started by his father, and it was turned into a massive concern by him. He also owned the farm on which Cyril Ramaphosa met Rolf Meyer, that famous fishing incident story, which was critical in the Government of National Unity and Cadessa, and the history of how the new democratic dispensation came into being. It was actually on his farm. He was also a trustee at Constitution Hill. So a major philanthropist, one of South Africa's most powerful businessmen.
Kevin Bloom started investigating the stories of abuse leveled against Frankel. He admits his investigation into the allegations was met with great opposition from those who knew Frankel.
I was trying to move the story forward, trying to understand who knew in the business community. I had every reason to believe that a lot of people knew what was going on, that this didn't come as a shock to that many people who were close to him. And I was driven by a desire to understand how power shuts the conversation down, how power stops these sorts of incidents from coming to light. Is there something about pedophilia that human beings can't look at, that they choose not to look at? Is it about the act itself, or is it about power? Is it about both?
Section 110 of the Children's Act stipulates that if anyone suspects abuse of any kind on a child, they have a legal obligation to report it. Section 54 of the Sexual Offences Act also stipulates that any person aware of sexual abuse on a child needs to report it to a police officer or a designated child protection organization. Failure to do so is a criminal offense. But some experts say to date, no one has been prosecuted. What then of the people who allegedly knew of the allegations against Frankel?
Well, many people phoned me after it was widely reported in the press and told me that it was actually a secret that was known by many. But because of the nature of who Franco was and because of his philanthropy, they wouldn't, no one was going to report him to the police until my clients did. Frankel's wife was telephone called by Nikki Levenstein, and to me, the words that she used was that she knew about it. She must come and explain that. The Sexual Offences Amendment Act, we're looking at any possible prosecution against Frankel's wife, because that obliges anyone who knows about sexual offences against children to report it. That is an investigation that we're presently conducting.
Kelly Frankel's attorney, Billy Gandelfinger, says there is no basis in law for his client to be charged because the alleged offences predate the Sexual Offences Act. For the alleged survivors, the damage has been done, but healing means acknowledging their scars and having the courage to face each day with hope.
My dad passed away not even knowing about it. He passed away not even knowing why I never wanted to go and visit him, why I pushed him away.
It touched the very core of who I am. My soul, and that can't be undone. It can be managed and it can be understood, and I can appreciate my behavior and why I respond in certain ways, but he almost in a way genetically changed the rest of my life.